welcome to Arirang TV's The Diplomat. International cooperation and exchange are more important than ever in today's global era. Here on The Diplomat, we will host a different foreign ambassador to South Korea every week to talk in depth about South Korea's exchanges with foreign countries in the fields of politics, economics, culture, and more. In Korea, June is the month to pay tribute to fallen patriots, including war veterans. Besides Korean, many foreign soldiers also took part in the Korean War, fought for peace and freedom on the Korean Peninsula. In all, 63 nations committed their troops, ships, aircrafts, and medical units to the defense of South Korea, and Australia was the second nation to commit their personnel from all three armed services to the war. Today, on the very first episode of The Diplomat, we are going to invite James Choi, the Australian ambassador to South Korea, to talk about cooperation and exchanges between the two countries dating back to the Korean War. Hello, Ambassador James Choi. Thank you for joining us today. It's a great pleasure to have you on our show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. You're the first Korean-born Australian ambassador to South Korea. How is it like to represent your country here in Korea where you were born?
It's a pleasure and honour to be here in Seoul. It's really an honour to be posted back to my country of birth, but most importantly to be Australia's representative to advance Australia's bilateral interests with the Republic of Korea.
Right.
It's also fantastic to be here just to see modern Seoul and see how it's developed over the years.
I heard that you immigrated to Australia with your family at the age of 4, but your parents still wanted you to learn the language and culture as well. I'm sure you had a great affection for country.
Well, obviously it's my country of birth, and so I still hold a very strong link with with Seoul and Korea. A lot of my relatives are still here. I still speak Korean. 예, 한국말 할 수 있습니다.
I heard that you speak fluent Korean.
어느 정도 할 수 있습니다. But I obviously speak Korean with my friends, but in official functions I speak English because I'm the representative of Australia here in Korea.
Would you mind speaking a little bit more Korean to our viewers?
시청자 여러분 안녕하십니까? 주한호주 대사 제임스 체입니다. 디플로마트 프로그램 통해서 아리랑 TV 통해서 시청자들을 뵙게 되어 영광입니다.
Thank you. 고맙습니다. A series of positive changes have emerged on the Korean Peninsula lately, along with diplomatic efforts to bring lasting peace. As a non-resident Australian ambassador to North Korea, I'm sure you've been closely following those moves. And what is your view?
Well, we're very welcoming of the recent change in tone on the Korean Peninsula. I remember when I arrived here, the tensions were very high, talk of preemptive strikes, bloody nose strikes, but now we're moving into a phase of negotiations. We very much welcome that. Australia's been very supportive of maximum pressure campaign to bring North Korea back to the negotiating table. We're hoping that certainly the US and DPRK summit, which is going to be held on the 12th of June, will lead to an agreement on North Korea's denuclearization. I think that will be a positive development on the Korean Peninsula. Mm-hmm. But we've been here before. We just hope that these negotiations lead to a credible outcome.
Right. Australia always has been committed to peace on the Korean Peninsula. Can you please elaborate the two nations' strong ties?
Australia has a long history of contributing to the peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. It stemmed from Australia's participation in the Korean War in 1950.
Yeah.
We contributed 17,000 troops to that war. 340 Australian troops died, protecting freedom and democracy on the Korean Peninsula. But from that day on, Australia's continued to engage on the Korean Peninsula, both supporting politically and strategically, and working with the Republic of Korean government in defending peace and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula.
Koreans will never forget Australian veterans' sacrifice and service during the Korean War. I know that you recently welcomed the veterans back to the country after a long 67 years. Let's take a look at that touching moment.
This is the Commonwealth Memorial in Gapyeong-gun, Gyeonggi-do Province, where Korean War veterans from the Commonwealth of Nations honored the soldiers who fell in the Battle of Gapyeong.
March on the colours!
Ambassador Choi also attended events on May 28th, commemorating the battle's 67th anniversary and honoring the legacy of the fallen. Then, on behalf of the 300 participants, he read out a message from Queen Elizabeth.
Her Majesty joins you in remembering all those who fell in the service of the United Nations Command, whether at sea, on land, or in the air.
This ceremony commemorates soldiers who served and died during peacekeeping operations against the Chinese People's Volunteer Army in April 1951. Back after 67 years, the veterans seemed pleasantly surprised by the change and development Korea has made in the past decades.
I was telling my grandson, who's here, Patrick, about the Battle of Gapyeong and showing him the positions of the Australians. That was D Company up on that hill. B Company was just here, but you've built buildings over it now. My memories mainly are of little starving children and everybody was the sadness of that terrible thing.
The ceremony continued at the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps Memorial.
The years condemned. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember them, lest we forget.
Ambassador Choi expressed his personal gratitude to the veterans for their touching service.
Man, nice to meet you.
Pleased to meet you.
Welcome to Korea.
I've been before.
You've been before?
I come in 2001.
Oh, okay.
I later reached there.
Oh, fantastic. You must feel proud of what you've contributed.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Well done. I'll see you a bit later.
Thanks a lot.
After the ceremony, the ambassador and veterans presented scholarships to 59 local students. In the past, they fought for a rather unknown country called Korea, and now they help cultivate aspiring talent in that very country.
They were amazing, yeah. I thought that, the way they wrote, there's nothing wrong with their English. The English is very good. Yeah, they're great kids, yeah. I wish them well, I wish them well.
참전 용사분들이 다 멋지시고 저 좋으신 분이라 가지고 만나서 기뻤습니다. 그리고 우리나라를 발전하는 데 기여를 해주신 분이라서 너무 반가웠습니다.
Honoring the fallen and healing the wounds of the war together, they solidified the two nations' long-standing relationship.
How did it feel personally to meet Australian veterans?
It was quite moving and touching. Some of the veterans hadn't been back to Korea since they served here on the Korean Peninsula during the Korean War. So their memories of Korea, most of the veterans' memories of Korea, are of desolation, of the tragedy of war, of seeing the Korean people suffering. They've come back after 67 years and they see a prosperous Korea, a vibrant democracy, Seoul as an amazing city which in terms of vibrancy and activity surpasses their imagination. So they were very proud of their contribution to laying the foundations of modern Korea. And to see their responses, their emotions, their recollections of their stories during the Korean War, it was quite moving and touching. So it was wonderful to be part of that moment.
Right. Australia and Korea established their diplomatic relations officially in 1961, but it really started 11 years ago when Australia joined the war, right?
That's correct. Australia's contribution to the Korean War really laid the foundations of our modern relationship. But I actually go back further. It was actually in the late 1800s where Australian missionaries came to Korea to support the development of Korea's modern medical facilities, contributing to establishment of schools, and the legacy of those missionaries, especially in the areas around Busan, still live to this day. So Australia's had a long engagement with Korea, as I said, dating back to the late 1800s. But you're right, Korean War was the foundations of our modern relationship.
I see. How many Australian soldiers and troops were deployed to South Korea at that time?
17,000 troops served on the Korean Peninsula during the Korean War. The immediate response at the outbreak of hostilities was the deployment of 2 naval ships that instantly came into the UN command, but also our Air Force planes that were based in Japan were the first response to the hostilities during the Korean War. But as I mentioned, 17,000 troops all up served during the whole period of the Korean War.
That's a lot of number.
Yes, and unfortunately 340 Australians died during that conflict.
From the ashes of the war in 1950s, South Korea transformed itself rapidly, and now South Korea is the 11th largest economy in the world. Now Australia and South Korea are strong partners with common values and interests. What's the status of two countries' economic and trade partnership?
We have a very strong trade and economic relationship. Korea is Australia's 3rd largest export market. Our two-way trade is almost $38 billion, and it's really been stimulated by the signing of a free trade agreement in 2014. So Australia sends a lot of our commodities, so iron ore, coal, steel industry, shipbuilding industry, but in return, Korea exports a lot of your wonderful manufactured goods such as Hyundai cars, LG TVs, Samsung phones. Australia's got a rich history of research. We've produced 16 Nobel Prize winners, a lot of them in medical research, in physics, in the high-end areas of research. But Korea is fantastic at commercializing, as we've seen with many of Korea's brands. So I think there's a natural synergy and complementarity, and that's where I believe the future will be, in this high-end services, high-end technology areas, especially as we look at the future economies that will be underpinned by the 4th Industrial Revolution. That's where I believe that future trade will lie.
Right, I see. President Moon Jae-in sent the nation's first envoy to Australia in an effort to diversify his administration diplomatic ground. What's your view on this opportunity for two countries to enhance their strong ties?
We very much welcome the diversification strategy of President Moon. Frankly, from Australia's perspective, it's not just working bilaterally, but how two like-minded countries, similar-sized economies with very strong shared values, how we can work together in confronting the shared challenges of our region. We are facing much more uncertain times, especially in the Pacific region, as there's going to be increased competition or rivalry in our own region. I think Korea and Australia must work much more closely together to defend things like free trade, to underpin the rules of international law, to ensure that we remain prosperous and secure, and defending the rules that underpinned our prosperity.
I see. In one interview, you mentioned that Australia and Korea share a lot of similarities. Could you elaborate some of those qualities, please?
Korea is the 11th largest economy. Australia is the 13th largest economy. If you look at our region, apart from Japan, Korea and Australia are the only members of the G20, OECD, all the key groupings that are among the Western developed economies. So in terms of our common interests of free trade, things that underpin our economies and trade, as shared interests in international law that underpin our security, there are very few countries that share those similar interests. So I think we need to do much more to protect the system that has allowed us to be both secure and prosperous.
I see. What is the image of South Korea in the minds of Australians?
Korea has a very favourable impression among Australians. As I mentioned, Korea's brand power has really improved the image of Korea in Australia. Things like, as I mentioned, Samsung phones, LG TVs, Hyundai cars. The brand power is enormous. But I think the thing that's really captured the attention, especially among the younger generation, is the K-wave, K-pop, K-drama. I remember a couple of years ago, Big Bang held a couple of concerts in Sydney, and they were sold out within minutes of the release of the tickets. That's the huge impact that K-wave or K-pop has had among Australians. So Korea has this amazing brand power in Australia, so I'm sure that Korea will do much better in the future in selling cultural, manufactured and other trade items in the Australian market.
I heard that you're also a big fan of Big Bang.
I am indeed a big fan, but I understand though that they're disbanded for the time being because a lot of their members are in military service. So
That's right.
I'm looking forward to their comeback.
Yeah, you're following pretty closely.
Oh, I'm in Korea, so it's pretty hard not to notice what's happening.
And diplomats promote friendly ties with the rest of the world. And you recently organized an event where we caught up with you. So let's take a look.
Ambassador Choi gave a special lecture at one university in Seoul last May. He's always up for sharing his insights and interacting with Korean young people.
학생 여러분 안녕하십니까? 주한 호주 대사 제임스 체입니다. 반갑습니다.
Under the theme of Australia's role in the Indo-Pacific, Ambassador Choi shared his professional expertise that day to broaden the students' horizons.
It is more important than ever that our countries work in unison to amplify our ideas and messages about the challenges in our region. This is as relevant to the North Korean issue as it is to other major challenges in the region. We need to enhance our cooperation to maintain and defend the rules-based order in the Indo-Pacific region, which has underpinned our shared peace and prosperity. Thank you very much.
It was no surprise that his lecture deeply inspired and enlightened the
The more
students.
friends you have, the more influential you become.
인도 태평양에 있는 다른 그런 국제 사회와도 우리가 교류를 해야 된다는 걸 잊지 않아야 된다는 그런 걸 다시 리마인더 받는 계기가 됐던 것 같아요. 네.
호주와 한국과의 관계 그리고 인도 태평양 지역에서의 양국의 역할을 단순히 호주 입장에서만 말씀하신 게 아니라 주한 호주 대사로서 또 한국계 호주인 입장으로서 얘기해 주셔서 굉장히 인상 깊었습니다.
As a mentor and real role model for countless students, Ambassador Choi truly brings Australia and South Korea closer together.
I know you give lectures and other events to the South Korea youngsters. What is the drive behind it, and why do you think these interactions are so important?
Firstly, diplomacy is no longer about government-to-government contacts. Diplomacy is now about engaging with the public, and so I'm very keen to engage with the younger generation of Koreans here, especially among students. The second point I'd like to make about engaging youth especially is I know the challenges that Korean kids face in a very challenging Korean environment. I grew up with Korean parents and I'm very aware of the pressures of Korean kids, especially to succeed, study, do well and then get a good job. I think they need to change their mindset a little to understand diversity and realise that there's a bigger world out there and there are opportunities to think more globally. And the message I keep on saying to Koreans is the opportunities to understand diversity, that there's no one yardstick for success. It's about pursuing your own dreams and goals and really taking a world perspective. And so that's the type of message I like to engage with the younger audience here in Korea.
Right. Also, I heard you are a passionate sportsman. And what kind of sports did you enjoy in Korea?
Oh, I like all sports. I'm a mad sports fan. It's because sports is very much a part of Australian culture, and that's what I grew up with in Australia. So I love marathon running. I took great delight in participating in the Jungang Seoul Marathon last year. I also participated in a table tennis event that was organised by I Erisa, a seniors table tennis event, and I had the privilege and honour to play table tennis with gold medalist Yoo Sung-min. It was a great honour to do so. But then also I had the great opportunity to run with the Olympic torch during the Olympic torch relay for the Pyeongchang Olympics to register Australia's support for the Winter Olympics. That was a great honour.
It sounds like sports are an integral part of your job as ambassador. How would you describe the importance of sports in diplomacy?
Well, for me personally, I love sports because I grew up with it in Australia. For me personally also, sports was a vehicle to learn things such as teamwork, leadership, values. So when I use sports diplomacy, I try to register, especially with the younger generation of Korean kids, that sports is a great way to learn things that you can't learn in textbooks. And you get a better view of the world, and also leadership. I try to register that message about using sports as a vehicle to learn other things, and not just about just doing sports by itself. So that's the reason why I use sports. It's a great opportunity also to meet Koreans, opportunity to run with Seoul citizens through the streets of Seoul, a great opportunity to understand more about the people and get to know Seoul.
Are you a good fast runner?
I wouldn't say I'm fast, but I'm very keen. I completed the Jungang Marathon in 2 hours 57 minutes, so I was very happy with the time.
That's awesome. Can you share with us your plans to improve friendly ties between Australia and South Korea, as well as what you hope to achieve?
My main aim in advancing the bilateral relationship between our two countries is based on 3 areas. Firstly, on trade. I really want to open up the opportunities for two-way trade and investment, to outline to the Korean market the opportunities of working with Korean companies in some of those new areas that I mentioned: science and technology, financial services, startups, the new area of trade that I mentioned. It's also on the political and strategic relationship, to promote Australia and Korea being natural partners in meeting the challenges that we face in the Indo-Pacific region. But the third area, and probably the most important area, is to highlight the opportunities for people-to-people links. So getting more Korean students to go to Australia, to get more Koreans to travel to Australia, to understand Australia, and build that network of contacts that will become the future basis of our bilateral relationship.
Finally, how do you want to be remembered after your career as Australian ambassador to South Korea?
Oh, that's a hard question. I think I'd like to be remembered as an ambassador that's engaged with the Korean people, that has used those opportunities to impart a little bit of an image of modern Australia, how vibrant we are, that we are a diverse society, a multicultural society, a country that is very much engaged with the Republic of Korea and is contributing to the region. I want to underpin Australia's credentials as a partner in the Indo-Pacific region and with Korea to the Korean audience. I guess the second point is, hopefully I'm creating the basis, the institutions, the linkages that will allow Koreans to understand a little bit more about Australia in the future, and it will create a group of people, companies, corporations and institutions that will be the basis of the future bilateral relationship.
Thank you for your time today, Ambassador James Choi.
Thank you very much, and it's been a pleasure to be on your program.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully I'll be remembered as a person that's introduced a modern face of Australia to the Korean audience. A person who's introduced the fact that Australia is a very diverse society, a vibrant society, a country that's open to the world, that has a vast opportunity. I think a diplomat is mainly a bridge builder and a communicator. We open up doors, we try to facilitate contacts, and we build networks. Most importantly, as an Australian diplomat, I advance Australia's interests So I create those networks for Australian companies, Australian governments, Australian institutions to build relations with the Republic of Korea. But it's more than just governments, really. It's about communicating with the public. It's about the Australian government, but also me personally as the Australian ambassador, communicating with the Korean people so that they get to understand a little bit about modern Australia, what Australia is about, our diversity, our strengths, the opportunities to build further contacts and networks so that we can build those bridges between our two countries.